And here we go. Welcome everybody to The Big Idea. I'm Dr. Jeffrey Hanna here doing a video about Ehlers Danlos Syndrome and genetic connective tissue hypermobility disorders. What I've got for you here is a brief little research article that I came across. It's a few years old at this point, but then getting into a few really important things that you should probably know about if you, a friend, or a family member turns out that you might have some type of hypermobility or connective tissue disorder. A few things on the dietary front, a few things on the inflammatory front, actionable steps that obviously are not going to change your genes, but can go a really long way toward restoring quality of life. So if you haven't already subscribed to the channel, please do that. Let's go ahead, jump into this. Now, I'm actually going to start out with a question that had come to my mind a few years back. So this was during the COVID years, where suddenly so many of us who were in clinical practice of all types, so medical doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, we were seeing all of a sudden people increasingly diagnosed with this thing that was called Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. In brief, what it is it's a genetic condition where the normal ligament structure made of something that's called a type 1 collagen, that for these certain people with this gene, the bonds of collagen are not quite as tight. And what it means is it means that ligaments are looser. People have a tendency then to be hyperflexible. A few basic little tests that you can do is you look to see, can you bend your finger, your little finger, backward farther than 90 degrees? Are you like you're in elementary school and you say, okay, you're double jointed and you get your thumb to go on the back of your forearm? Can you hyperextend your elbows? Can you hyperextend your knees? Can you palm the floor? Do you have any joints that you can pop and do weird little party tricks? People who had these conditions before COVID, they usually knew that there were going to be some certain problems. But then during the COVID years, we saw a huge spike in the number of people, and not just children, but adults, who all of a sudden knew that they had extra flexibleness, but then started having a lot more nasty symptomatology. Brain fog, pain, migraine, dizziness, the full shebang, and it overlaps a lot with conditions known as dysautonomy. It's where your viscera, so your heart, your lungs, your digestive system, things are just not working the right way, associated with long COVID, all sorts of stuff like that. So this was the preliminary question that I had in my mind. Well, why is it that there were always these people who had the gene, but then suddenly things get expressed differently to where they start having all kinds of symptoms that they didn't have before? And what do we need to do then in order to put the genie back into the bottle, or at least as much as possible? Now, certainly a good chunk of it has to do with, if there's an underlying physical injury of some kind where ligament has gotten stretched or it's starting to thin, and that's where you need to do various types of physical therapy, specific chiropractics to restore normal function motion. But there's a lot more to it than that, and I'm not going to pretend to be a world-class expert in Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. I'm not. But what I do want to share with you is a little something I've come across in the research here that give a few tangible things that I have seen in practice that can make a really big difference toward helping people with this gene live a much higher quality of life. So let's have a look at that. Okay, research article from 2023. This is the summary. Degradation of collagen 1, so that's the ligament fiber, by activated C1s in periodontal Ehlers-Danlos syndrome. And as they talk about, Ehlers-Danlos can affect any number of ligaments or connective tissues in the body. So it can show up in the neck, it can show up in the hands, it shows up in the knees, but it can also show up in the teeth, where people are more likely to have quote-unquote weak teeth or brittle teeth or bleeding gums, different things like that. So they just selected this particular cohort right here because they knew that they could get tissue samples from these people by basically collecting a few cells from inside of the mouth, and they wanted to see then in a lab setting under the microscope what would happen to the tissue under certain conditions. So they talk a little bit about some of the symptoms. So easily bruising, plaquing, joint hypermobility, hoarse voice. Less commonly, it can show up in organ or blood vessel issues. So less common. It's always a concern for people if they've been diagnosed with EDS, but relatively rare, fortunately, here. They also talk a bit about how, okay, it is a heterozygous missense mutation of a couple of genes. So a person can have ligament laxity and they can have instability, but what we're talking about here is a genetic presusceptibility, not condemnation that you're going to have pain or other symptoms, but simply what it means is a much smaller margin of error. So here's what they did. They already knew that there was some type of issue with the formation of the connective tissue, the ability of the body to make these really, really strong ligaments. What they did using, molecular biological assays, so tissue sample tests, we identified activated C1s as an enzyme which degrades collagen 1 in cell culture and in vitro assays. So matrix collagen turnover in cell culture was assessed using labeled hybridized proteins, which revealed. So here's the important bit, and then I'm going to bring it around to what this means tangibly. Which revealed fast and comprehensive collagen protein remodeling in patient fibroblasts. Furthermore, here's the important part. Collagen 1 was completely degraded by these enzymes when assays were performed at 40 degrees Celsius or 104 degrees Fahrenheit, indicating, this is it, even moderate elevated temperature has a tremendous impact on collagen 1 integrity. So this high turnover is expected to interfere with the formation of stable extracellular matrix, the strength of those tissues, and result in tissues with loose compaction, a hallmark of the Ehlers Danlos phenotype. Now, what does that mean in English? What it means is it means that if a person has Ehlers Danlos, they've got the gene, that if there are certain circumstances which cause a rise of internal body temperature, that the ligament structure starts to weaken. And this can happen, in all honesty, for a lot of different reasons. But the big ones, because there was that question again, why were we seeing this around the COVID era? It was because whether it was natural or artificial immunity exposure to the COVID virus, where one of the hallmarks was a very high temperature. And this is just a hypothesis, this is not proven, but the resulting increase in a person's temperature, if they already had this gene, could have weakened the ligaments a little more. So previously asymptomatic, but now the genie's out of the bottle because of this increased temperature elevation, sparked by an inflammatory virus, sparked by the body's own immune system, and then sparked by the variety of things that continually happen after that that promote higher levels of inflammation in the body that results in higher than usual core temperature. Because again, they're talking about complete tissue disruption at 40 degrees Celsius or 104. Normal body temperature, 98.9. And if you have even a low grade rise in temperature, that can happen if it's hot outside, if you are exercising, if you have even a low grade cold or an allergy, something like that, if it increases even toward that 99, 100 degrees, not true blue fever, but it's just starting to go up, that's going to start to disrupt the ability of that collagen to stay nice and tight, and as a consequence, more likely to produce symptoms. Now, what this means, and again, I'm not going to pretend to be the expert or the naturopath, but it means that there are certain things that need to be done, especially for people with Ehlers Danlos Syndrome, because you've got a much smaller margin of error. You have to be extra cautious about not introducing things into your body that are going to be promoting an inflammatory response. There's a couple of things here that I want to point out that can help with that. Number one is that you need to actively work to lower your core temperature. This is not uncommon at least I believe. Why is it people feel typically worse during the hot summer months? So take the time to jump in the pool, have a cold shower, cool the external and also the internal body down at regular intervals. But arguably even more important are making sure that any sources of inflammation in your body are going to be reduced as much as humanly possible. This is the dietary side of the equation. If there's any one thing that promotes inflammation in our modern, our Western world, it is our diet. Alcohol, sugars, grains. These are very common pro-inflammatory substances. I've done lots of other videos about this that, in brief, anything that your own body says is not good for you, the normal tight lining of the stomach and of the digestive system like this starts to get leaky, and as a consequence, stuff can start getting into the bloodstream and promoting an inflammatory cascade. There is no perfect solution for this. So I had said grains and sugars and alcohols, those are the common ones, but every single person is going to have different things that they are susceptible. So me as an example, even though I don't have EDS, my body is very susceptible to almonds and also to eggs, even if they are soaked, even if they are organic. My body says no, it doesn't cause a major inflammatory response, but I immediately feel sapped of energy, I get very sinusy, and I get bloated in the front of my stomach, just in the upper part right here. If you experience that, you're eating something that, even if it is a normal healthy food, is probably not good for you. And through a process of elimination trial to ultimately find success, you can make a much better improvement, reducing inflammatory levels in your body, and as a result, feeling better. Again, you can't change the gene, but you can help it so the gene is not expressing, so that things can actually start to heal up the way that they are supposed to. Now, in addition to that, there are a few additional supplements, things that you need to fortify your body with that go toward promoting connective tissue repair. Let me show you what I mean. Now, this is not a comprehensive list. I will say that there's lots and lots of things here, but these I'm going to argue are some of the most important ones. So number one, vitamin C. Ideally, either liposomal vitamin C or a different substance that's called glutathione. These are the antioxidants that your body is just able to absorb and utilize because it goes toward reducing inflammation, and vitamin C essential for connective tissue repair. If you've ever heard of scurvy, scurvy is what used to happen to people when they worked out on the oceans. If they were not getting adequate amounts of vitamin C, that was leading to bleeding gums, tissue breakdown, gross sickness, all kinds of stuff like that. So we need good quality vitamin C or glutathione to promote tissue repair. Also, fortifying the body with proline and glycine, which are the primary amino acids, so proteins, that go toward forming collagen, and also lysine, which is essential for the body to make tighter connections between those collagen proteins. Now, you can have this by having normal meat, which is good, but also wise to take amino acid supplements to fortify extra protein. Protein is the building block that makes up the body. A diet that's going to be high in good quality omega-3s and protein, essential for people with Ehlers Danlos Syndrome. Also, methylated vitamins. Many vitamins, many minerals. They come in all kinds of different forms, but I use this as a bit of a weird example here. Let's say you have calcium, okay? You have calcium in a form that your body can absorb, but you can also get calcium from a rock. Calcium carbonate, that's that little white stuff that you might see on the inside of your pipes. Now, which one do you think is cheaper to source? Probably the rock form, which is why a lot of calcium supplements, they're very inexpensive, but unfortunately, they're not in the form that the body can actually use. Point being, any vitamin that you would ever take, you need to make sure that it's in a form that your body can actually absorb. you'll be able to find these. Yes, they are a little bit more expensive, but any good quality health food store or supplement store would have that. Now, the idea and the importance of methylated is, especially over the last decade, there's also been this discovery of what's called an MTHFR gene. Again, not condemnation, but what it means is it means that your liver is not able to metabolize certain substances, certain vitamins in very particular forms. The common one is vitamin B9. It comes in two different forms. One of them, the common and inexpensive one, is folic acid, IC, versus a more natural form, which is called folate. A person can have B9 folic acid, but especially if their body, if you have this gene that goes toward being able to, and is highly associated with EDS as well, if you have the normal folic acid supplement, your body cannot absorb it. And as a result, it's going to lead to liver toxicity and ultimately tissue breakdown. If you've been diagnosed with an EDS, most likely you have some type of genetic mutation similar to this as well, and you need to make sure that the vitamins that you take, all of your B vitamins and all of your B9, your B6, and also your B12, they need to be in this methylated form. Fortunately, even though this was relatively rare 10 years ago, at least our understanding of it, now that we are more aware of it, finding these types of vitamins in this form is much easier. Again, you could find this at any health food store. But again, diagnosed with either an MTHFR gene, or if you're dealing with issues like this, probably a really, really good place to look for improving. Now, also zinc and copper. These are essential minerals that go toward, again, promoting tissue repair. Now, a couple things about these is these are antagonists to each other. You don't want to have them at the same time. And I would also add that when it comes to zinc, never take zinc on an empty stomach. I've made that mistake plenty of times in my own life. It will rot your guts. It's not very fun. So all of these you can have with food. Copper's the one little exception right there. And again, not an exhaustive list, but a few really important things. If you're dealing with EDS, this can really help out promoting the tissue repair. No, it doesn't make everything magically go away, but you're giving your body the raw materials that he or she needs to actually be able to start to put things back together. Now, a few other things that I will add. You need to have good quality water. Water that does not contain chlorine or fluoride. Both of these elements are put as disinfectants, but they are also extremely damaging to the inner linings of the digestive system and all of the tissues on the inside of your body where all of that water is going to go. And like we said, you need to get rid of sources of inflammation. If you are using a reverse osmosis filter, you do need to make sure that you are remineralizing your water, because otherwise you end up leaching all of your nutrients out of your bones. It's not a good thing here. But a good quality water filter that takes out chlorine and fluoride, very essential. There's also some anecdotal evidence that is showing that if you drink, not 100% of it, but if you drink non-flavored aloe vera, it's not sugary, it's not sweet at all, it just tastes like normal water, that it has a protective effect for the digestive system that allows for it to heal, again, reducing inflammatory levels in the body. And the last one that I would mention there was, again, the idea of a cold plunge, a cold shower, where for a minute or two, you're exposing your body, as unpalatable and as unpleasant as it is, to cold. The reason you do that, again, is that you would lower the body temperature, not a huge amount, not to a dangerous amount. I'm not talking about jumping in a frozen lake or anything of the sort and staying there for 10 minutes, but deliberately making sure that you are cooling your body down. And if you live in a very hot environment, making sure a couple of things. Number one, that you try to cool off as much as possible, but also that if you need to hide in an air-conditioned environment, that you have your vents properly serviced, because molds, allergens, pollens, They get into the AC units, they get into the vents, and they will circulate all the way through your home. And again, is if you feel sinusy, if you feel gross on the inside, especially if you're trying to sleep at night, that usually means that there's a circulation issue in the home. And as a result, you want to make sure that you're going to have that properly serviced so that you are not accidentally just promoting more sickness in your body. So a lot of stuff in that little video right there. I hope that it's going to be useful because, again, you can't change a person's genetics, but not condemnation either. Remember what I said in the beginning of this video. Many people had gone years, if not decades, prior to 2020 without really experiencing any of these symptoms. And then, of course, a pandemic occurs. We're exposed to a different type of virus. Temperature goes up, we get sick, but then everything has been downhill since. It doesn't mean that your body has stopped being able to repair itself, but it does mean most likely something happened. There's a bit of a breakdown in the connective tissue. So now what we need to do is focus on all of the strategies that can go back toward promoting healing. Your body, in its wisdom, never stops healing until you take your last breath. Therefore, if you can employ the best possible strategies, doing the best that you can with the resources and knowledges that you have, if it allows things to heal up, it does mean that it's possible to improve quality of life rather than staying stuck at a low level. EDS is not condemnation for pain and dysfunction forever. It just means you have to be more aware about the good things to put into your body and also the bad things to keep out. So again, I hope you guys did find this video useful. Again, please share this with friends, family members if you think that it would benefit or if it would help them out. If you want some more information about the different types of conditions that we can do to help out, you can check out the other videos on my channel here. You can also go over to our clinic website, which is clearchirospokane.com, where we've got a bunch of other videos, blog articles about the kinds of people who we're able to help out with. Thank you guys again for watching. This is Dr. Jeffrey Hanna, Clear Chiropractic Spokane. Get well, live well, stay well.